Well, happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to NC Family's weekly update for the week ending Friday, March 14th. I'm John Rustin, and I'm here with Sharon Sullivan and Jerry Royal on our team. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hey.
All right. NC Family started the week off this week in Greenville, North Carolina, where we hosted our annual Greenville dinner on Monday night. We really love going to Greenville. The sense of community, Christian community there is just wonderful. And actually, our organization really kind of started out as an initiative and a commitment from some folks like Dick Douglas and our board chairman, Herb Ormond, right here in the Greenville area. But they've had a major impact on this organization, our founding, and our continuation for over 30 years. So it's always great to get together with the folks in Greenville. Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation was our keynote speaker, and he just did an incredible job sharing his personal story and highlighting really the dignity and value of every person regardless of their circumstances. As some of you may know, Ryan was conceived when his biological mother was raped. She made the loving decision to carry Ryan to term and then to place him for adoption. And he was adopted into a loving family that turned out to be made up of 15, 2 parents and 13 children, I think 3 of whom were biological to the parents. Yeah. And the balance were adopted. And so it was a very diverse, multiracial family, and Ryan shares a lot about that, but just really makes the point of how important and valuable and valid every single individual is. Jerry, you have thoughts about that?
No, it was just an incredible story. Like, he was the first of 10 adopted children, as you say, multiracial, some with disabilities. Just an amazing story of what God did in their family, wants to do in the midst of what we see as tragedy. And you just talked about being loved and cared for. And just, like you say, it's as strong and clear a pro-life message as I've ever heard.
Yeah. Well, and a great and encouraging message for us to just consider the value of every person whenever we go out. If we go out shopping or we're riding around, just interacting with people, that every individual, we believe, is created in the image and likeness of God by God. And by just virtue of that, we have unestimable, if that's the right word, unlimited value in the eyes of God, and we should in the eyes of each other. So, yeah. Sharon, I know you have just a real heart for pro-life, not just the pro-life message, but just, and as a registered nurse, just to see the value of life and the dignity of every human person.
That's true. Especially, we tend to focus on babies a lot of time in the pro-life movement, but really it's across the entire lifespan.
Yeah.
And as a nurse, I've seen that from, a newborn baby all the way to someone's end of life care. And it's very important. Yeah. We want to keep our focus on that at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, on Wednesday, Governor Josh Stein gave his State of the State address to the General Assembly, the Supreme Court, all of our elected and appointed officials, as well as the entire state of North Carolina. And Jerry and Sharon, I will have to say that I thought the governor's address was quite positive, strong, quite measured, and quite restrained compared to what we have grown accustomed to in recent years. He really focused primarily on relief for Western North Carolina, for his budget priorities, and also supporting teachers, law enforcement, and children and families. I thought, again, it was a very solid, measured speech, and was really devoid of a lot of the hot button, more controversial issues that we've grown accustomed to hearing really touted a lot in State of the State addresses and other types of things like that. So I thought it was really good. I think he represented himself very well, and really gave kind of a representation that he was really interested in working with the General Assembly. Of course, he's a Democratic governor. The state legislature is led by Republicans. Republicans have a veto-proof supermajority in the state Senate. They're 1 seat short of a veto-proof supermajority in the state House. But it was really kind of the tone of his message was a willingness to work together when he can with the legislature to try to find common ground.
Mm-hmm. I think you're exactly right, John. And the temptation often is to point to the things where there were differences. The one thing I know that does come to mind, he expressed his opposition to opportunity
Yes,
scholarships,
true.
educational freedom. But overall, like you say, except for things like that, it was just a very positive and encouraging message. And, as you say, John, especially affirming all the incredible things that have happened in Western North Carolina, talking about the role of the state, but also recognizing the role that volunteers and others have had, talking about his priority, talking about the Good Samaritan story,
Yes.
Appropriating funds to groups like the Baptist on Mission. It was a very, very positive message.
Yeah. Sharon, thoughts?
I agree. I mean, I think it was, like you said, very measured, and it was nice to actually see the camaraderie in the room.
Yes.
I mean, I think both sides of the aisle were applauding when appropriate, and it gives you a sense of hope for how we're going to move forward.
I was just about to say that. I think it does give a sense of hope that, hey, and as adversity often brings different minded people together. And I think this is what we saw, is especially with just the devastation that Hurricane Helene wrought on Western North Carolina in particular, that folks from across the political spectrum, folks from across all spectrums have really come together to serve their fellow man and woman and child. And, it's been exciting and encouraging to see that come out of what has been and continues to be a very, very difficult circumstance. And so it's great to see a message that sought to bring folks together as opposed to split them apart. Of course, Representative or Republican House Speaker Destin Hall, House Representative Destin Hall, gave the response, which was equally as strong, but it seemed like the Speaker agreed with a lot of the priorities, budget priorities and things, but also sought to make a more clear distinction between some of the policy differences between the Democrat governor and the Republican-led legislature. I think, that's not necessarily a negative thing, but clearly there are differences of opinion on a variety of issues. Jerry, as you said, the governor made a pretty strong statement about opportunity scholarships and his lack of support for that. The speaker made some comments about the Republican-led legislature's commitment and priorities on some other issues. Yeah, thoughts on that?
Well, again, and it was helpful too, because we do like things that are trying to bring people together, but we also do need to recognize some of those differences, and we know some of those are things that we work on at the legislature. And we mentioned earlier the issue of life and things like that. Those are going to continue, but I'll continue to try to remind myself the way to move forward is to find ways we can work together, talk together, even when we don't agree. Yeah. But he did, like you say, pointed out some of those differences.
And a couple of those issues, one of the primary issues that he mentioned several times was the protecting women's sports and keeping biological men out of women's bathrooms, locker rooms, and intimate spaces. And those are the types of things, we think are non-negotiables that are common sense that need to be done. And the speaker was a real champion in his response to the State of the State address, addressing some of those issues. Sharon, do you have any thoughts there?
Just that they both mentioned working with the federal government and making sure things got on track and kept going. And, we need to remember that there is a hierarchy in how that works, and it's beneficial that they're both willing to work with President Trump to move some of this stuff forward. Yeah.
Well, and each other, as we've been talking about. So it's again, there's hope. There was encouragement. They're not going to just be kind of at a standoff and fisticuffs all the time. And I think, often as we see working in this realm behind the scenes, there's a lot that's going on that the public doesn't know about, that the media doesn't report on. The media often wants to portray the most controversial things, but there's a lot of agreement that takes place behind the scenes. So, I think it was Wednesday night was a good night that provided hope and encouragement that we're going to see some good things come out of the General Assembly, and with the governor's support. So, as far as activity in the General Assembly this week, I think the most notable action really at the General Assembly was the passage of a bill Tuesday to basically eliminate DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives from our public schools. The bill, Senate Bill 227, has been moving through the state Senate, and we've talked about that for the last couple of weeks, but it did receive passage on a party line vote in the state Senate on Tuesday of this week.
And I think it was, again, a great example. Senator Lee was the lead person on the bill, explained these are not concepts that we shouldn't teach. He talked about if we properly taught them, that they're important things for people to understand about just what we talked about earlier. We're all created in God's image. We're equal. But some of what's being taught, and he had a notebook of some examples of what is currently being taught, which is saying, I know you mentioned it earlier, John, when we were talking about it, and not to get too much into specifics, but they're just saying, they have things now that say an individual solely by virtue of his or her race or sex is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive. That's not, obviously it's not true. And to be teaching that to young people who are listening to teachers and saying, okay, this is truth, we need to say, okay, let's talk about race and sexuality and do it in a truthful way. But people say, well, we don't want to ignore the past. He's saying, no, we're not saying ignore the past. Teach the truth about the past, but teach it in the right way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think these DEI initiatives often, they really divide, and it focuses on the distinctions that some people want to portray as on the basis of an individual's race or sex, that they're either superior or inferior, kind of bottom line. And that's the kind of initiative, the kind of message that I think Senator Lee and other supporters of this legislation, and we want to get out of our public schools. As you said, Jerry, teach history, but teach it truthfully and frankly, but don't push an initiative that's going to give this idea to our students that there's something innately wrong with, your gender, your sex, or your race. So,
Exactly.
Yeah. Sharon, any reflections on that?
Yeah, basically just that you need to be able to have an exchange of ideas in education so people understand what's going on. And so I think it fosters conversation instead of just assuming where you should stand on an issue. And I think it's fine for people to say, this hurts my feelings or this makes me uncomfortable, but it shouldn't be, you should also feel uncomfortable. So that's kind of what I got out of it, that they still want to have the conversations,
Yes.
but in a fair way.
Right. It's not just removing any discussion of any of these items altogether out of the schools, but it's removing these initiatives that really seek to impose really a very leftist type of viewpoint. So there's a link below the video to the DEI bill that passed the Senate. So if you want to learn more, and we don't have time right now, of course, to go into all the details of it, but there's a lot of information, and it distinguishes exactly what the bill is intending to address. So I think that would be helpful. So that's linked to under the bill. Finally, this week, we have some somewhat sad news from the standpoint of us here at the Family Policy Council and our supporters across the state, and that is that we are giving a very fond farewell to Sharon Sullivan. This is Sharon's last day with us. She's been a invaluable member of our team for the last couple of years, has been a presence and a voice down at the General Assembly, but Sharon has had some kind of personal family circumstances arise that really require her full attention. And so we hate to see her go, but, Sharon, you've just been wonderful to work with, and just a great person to have as part of the NC Family team. So we hate to see you go, but we know that you have important things that you need to deal with, and we will be praying for you and encourage our viewers and our supporters to be praying for Sharon and her family. We just, it's kind of, I won't say it's bittersweet because it's more bitter than sweet, but we've really valued you as a member of our team.
Well, thank you. And thank you to everyone out of our supporters, everyone watching. It has been an honor and a privilege to work with these wonderful people and to pursue a godly North Carolina and to work on your behalf. So thank you for your prayers. I would ask you continue to pray for me if you think of it from time to time. And I will, of course, be following everything that's going on in here and praying for all of you. So thank you, John and Jerry. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sharon.
Well,
Sure.
just to add a note too, I know Sharon and I, before I knew this news, we were at the legislature, Health and Human Services were talking about the needs and families and what to do. And I told Sharon already from what I knew in her family, how God's working in her life to be there for her family. And that's first and foremost. I mean, obviously the government can have a place to come in, but that she herself was already living. And then to find out she's going to go to a whole nother level where she's listening to what God's calling her to do. And that's what I think we all realize and what we're all about here. Listen to what God's plan is. What does he want to do in our life? So thank you, Sharon, for your witness while you were here. Thank you for your witness as you make this move.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, friends, that's what we've got for you this week. As always, thank you for your support, for your involvement, and especially for your prayers. We're grateful for that, and we will be reporting back next week. But please do, as you think about it, keep Sharon and her family in your prayers. And with that, we will see you next week. God bless you.